Hi, it's Tootie Tagerly live to you on a Tuesday from beautiful sunny San Francisco. And I'm talking to you today about tips for how to navigate the first 90 days of a new job. Because I support a lot of people in tech through career transitions, whether it's at the individual contributor level or the senior manager level. And I wanted to share common mistakes and what you can do about it, a framework for how to navigate the first 90 days. So, a mistake that I have made a lot, multiple times actually, I don't seem to learn, and a mistake that I hear of regrets from other people is feeling when you start a new job, especially if you've been going through months and months of interviewing and selling yourself and putting up this kind of persona of me as a competent, confident leader, is you can sometimes take that ego factor over into the new job and really come in strong, raging, and saying, I got to impress. I got to do this. This is all the things I'm going to do. I'm going to show them how awesome I am, all the things that I know, all the experiences and things that I've done in the past. Well, that is not a good strategy. It can be very off putting. It can come off as arrogant. It can really sound that you're not listening to things that are happening. So that's one mistake that I've made before and that I've seen other people do. But let's flip from the mistakes and talk about common experiences when you're in the first 90 days of a new job. So the first thing I want to really share and talk about is that we all have imposter syndrome. And if you think about it, it completely makes sense. Imposter syndrome is feeling, oh, I don't belong here. I'm not as smart as anyone else or as knowledgeable as anyone else. I must be a fraud. And more specifically, we all have imposter syndrome during these first 90 days of a new job. Because no, you don't belong. You just showed up here. It's day one or day 15, and you're not going to have the trust, the longevity, the experiences built up from spending months or years at a job. And no, you're not going to know as much as anyone else about the specific context of this job. It might be a new industry for you, it might be a new vertical for you. And even if it's a similar industry and vertical and you're maybe bouncing back and returning to the same company, you don't know all the complexities and changes of reputation of people, who's good at what, who has the historical context around this. And you can call that all office politics, but I really call it about knowing people, knowing the systems and interrelationships and interdependencies of a system of people. So I think it's a basic fact that, hey, starting at a new job, the first 90 days is ripe for imposter syndrome. I think the key to this is not continuing to tell yourself the story of, I'm a fraud, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't belong here, but simply pointing out the facts that, of course, you feel like you don't belong. Of course, you don't have the information. Of course, you don't have the background context. Come on, it's your first, what, week, your first 30 days, your first 90 days. Interesting fact is that it's the culture of the workplace that helps you get over imposter syndrome, and typically this is where unconscious bias comes in. Often from research studies, white males are assumed to have the knowledge and skills and they'll get over it, imposter syndrome, pretty quickly, whereas unfortunately women of color often have to prove more that they do belong and they do have those skills. But regardless, we all have that imposter syndrome. So what helps? What helps when you're starting this first 90 days is knowing that you have a superpower that nobody else has here. Your superpower is you can look at your company, your organization, your team with fresh eyes, because everyone else has been there already and they've gotten used to the patterns and the ways of working, which means that you can come in and very politely be curious and ask a lot of questions. Which leads to the second point of this framework is knowing that we all have imposter syndrome. Let's bias for learning, because you are the new person here. Yes, you should form opinions, you should form a point of view, you should form a perspective, especially if you're an exec and you're going to be expected to set the vision and mission of a team, of a group of people. But really remember the bias for learning. The first 90 days, you're drinking from a fire hose. So, something that I recommend for most of my clients is at the end of each week, really remind yourself, hey, what have I learned this week that's really amazing and awesome and interesting? And write it down. What have I learned about maybe the product? What have I learned about the company? Maybe its business model, where it's going. What have I learned about all the different types of people I'm interacting with, about my boss, about my coworkers? So those are three good angles to kind of capture what am I learning, because it's going to help you feel accomplished. It's going to help you feel, okay, this is really hard. I'm doing something. You could even write down that you've learned how to maneuver through a complex HR system and sign up for a 401k. That's progress. Little tiny steps in capturing it. Related to that part of the framework, a tip is also to slow down. You don't have to run that marathon in the first 90 days. It's meant to be an onboarding period and a learning period. That is for most companies, of course. There are different company cultures. And but I would bias towards slowing down rather than coming in as that expert who knows exactly what to do, because there is a lot of things you can be curious and learn about. And then the second part of this is having crystal clear alignment of expectations with the people around you. The most important person is your boss, making sure that you and them are 100% aligned on, hey, this is what success looks like. These are perhaps good targets to hit at the 30, 60, 90-day mark. This is where you hope to go after a year. How do people get rewarded here? What are performance review criteria? What are you interested in? What are they interested in? So really having a lot of these alignment conversations, primarily with your boss, around expectations. And after you've had those with your boss, you could extend them to other people, to the team of people you're managing. How do they like to be managed? To the peers, the cross-functional peers that you're going to be partnering with, and to other leadership, maybe in other areas of the org. But it really is about slowing down and getting that alignment. And then finally, the last point of these 4 points in how to navigate the first 90 days of a new job is really focus on building trust. As I said earlier, we want to bias for learning, but it's not just learning. It's not just the book smarts and the knowledge. It's building trust with all the people around you who are important. So how do you figure that out? You figure that out by drawing out a relationship map. So you probably kind of know the org chart. You know that here's where you stand, here's your boss, here's who your boss reports to, what are the peers on all of that, here are your other allies around. But a relationship map is another way to look at it that's not purely positional and based on title. Basically, it's when you look around and you're having a lot of one-on-ones and talking to people, you're trying to figure out, all right, which of all of these people around here are my allies? And you figure that out when you have the one-on-ones by kind of watching and monitoring, is this person friendly? Is this person genuine? Does this person want to help me? Are our roles mutually complementary? So the most important person in your relationship map should be your boss. That should be the one role that you really want to build a lot of trust with. Close to that would be the people on your team, especially if you are coming in, they've been in a state of turmoil, maybe they haven't been taken care of for a while. So those are kind of the two closest ones, your boss and then your team. But then this is where it starts to get interesting, because you probably have a list of people you should talk to. If you don't, get that list from your boss and start having these one-on-ones. And as you have these one-on-ones, kind of figure out, how does this particular person that I'm talking to fit into my world of what I think this job is about? How do I have impact and how I do good work in this job? And what if that person, that person may not be positionally relevant, but it might be a person who started on the same day as you did. And you really want to cultivate that relationship, because remember that imposter syndrome? It's nice to know that there's someone else going through the exact same thing. It might be a person who started 6 months before you. And so they're a little bit further along the journey than you are, and they can help you. But look for the allies because you want to feel the closest, the fastest way to build a sense of belonging is to find the people who make you feel good at work. So look for those allies around there. And then there's going to be cases where there's that one person and you really know that you're going to have to work with them. It's super crucial because your product and their product, or your org and their org, need to partner together. But you kind of know that they're not an ally. That's okay. That's life. You're going to have to work with them. So have a couple of these targets and be like, all right, how do I really, really build trust with Wang Hua? How do I spend that time with her? How do I really think about what is it that she wants and what is my role and how can I help her? And how do we build a common goal together? Because if they're pretty important from a functional or impact perspective, I'm pretty sure you have some common goals. So that's how you start mapping out what are the important relationships to build trust in. And it would be good to have some goals. Now, at the end of the 90 days, it's going to feel like me and this maybe slightly problematic person are closer. And that will be because I would have done XYZ, or have had set up a regular one-on-one, have been able to support them in this or that way. All right, so that's it. This talk is how to navigate the first 90 days of a new job. And really, that's remembering that we all have imposter syndrome because we're new. As you're going in, don't be the expert because you're not. Instead, bias for learning, capture what you're learning every week. Slow down. This is an onboarding period for most companies. Slow down and very clearly align on expectations with your boss. And finally, focus on the trust. Still onboarding. Create this relationship map of the allies, your boss, your team, and the important people you need to build relationships with. All right, that's it for today. I will see you next week. Bye.